$10 million. That's what they placed on your head. Not because you committed a crime, because you committed something far worse in their eyes. You became untouchable. Professional killers looked at your file and walked away. Bounty hunters with decades of blood on their hands opened the dossier, saw your face, and retired the next morning. The most ruthless mercenaries in the game suddenly discovered they had families to go home to, morals they forgot they had, fears they thought they'd buried. You want to know why? Because hunting prey is profitable. Hunting a predator that's already tasted their own death and walked out the other side? That's suicide with a paycheck attached. They didn't put that bounty on you because you're dangerous. Dangerous people get caught every day. They put it on you because you're the living proof that their entire system is theater. Every threat they made, every boundary they set, every cage they built, you walked through all of it like it was smoke. And the scariest part for them? You're still walking. Right now, somewhere in a dimly lit room, powerful people are having a conversation about you. Your name is being whispered with the kind of reverence usually reserved for natural disasters. Not because of what you did, because of what you represent. The possibility that their rules were always optional, that their power was always borrowed, that everything they built their empires on was just a collective hallucination that required everyone's participation, and you stopped participating. $10 million says someone out there believes you need to be stopped. But here's what that number really translates to in their language: fear, desperation, the mathematical value of their sleepless nights. They didn't just put a price on your head, they quantified their own psychological collapse. Because you know what happened when they first tried to break you, when they assembled their forces, mobilized their networks, activated every weapon in their arsenal. You did something they never calculated for in any of their simulations. You smiled. Not because you were confident, not because you had a plan. You smiled because somewhere in the wreckage of whatever they thought would destroy you, you found the most dangerous discovery a human being can make. You found out you can't be killed in any way that matters. Physical death? That's the easy one. That's the coward's exit. What they wanted was to kill the idea of you, to erase the possibility you represent, to make an example so thorough that no one would ever dare to walk your path again. They wanted to kill your spirit, your will, your essence, and parade your broken shell through the streets as a warning. Instead, you became the warning. Every person who takes that bounty is walking into their own funeral. They just don't know it yet. They see 10 million and think about what they'll buy. Private islands, retirement, freedom from the same game that's enslaving them. They don't see what you see. That accepting that contract isn't a transaction. It's an admission. An admission that their entire existence has been spent as a tool for people who would never put a bounty on their own enemies, who would never take the risk themselves, who build their kingdoms on the backs of people desperate enough to believe that blood money spends the same as clean money. You used to be like them, hungry, desperate, willing to do whatever it took to climb, willing to accept the terms and conditions without reading them, willing to sell pieces of yourself for a seat at a table you didn't even want to sit at. Then something shifted. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was clarity. Maybe it was just exhaustion with the performance. But you stopped playing the game according to their rules. You stopped showing up to battles they scheduled, stopped answering to hierarchies that only existed because everyone agreed to pretend they did. You committed the ultimate sin in their religion. You stopped believing, and belief is the only thing that keeps their entire structure from collapsing into the joke it's always been. Every empire, every dynasty, every power structure in human history has been held together by one fragile thread: collective belief. The belief that the person at the top deserves to be there, that the rules apply equally, that if you work hard enough, sacrifice enough, bleed enough, you'll earn your place. You stopped believing that lie. Worse than that, you started living proof that it was a lie. Your existence alone is an act of psychological warfare against everyone still trapped in the matrix you escaped. They can't kill you with money. You've tasted poverty and wealth and realized they're both just different flavors of the same cage. They can't kill you with violence. You've been to the edge of your own destruction and came back with receipts. They can't kill you with isolation. You've sat in the darkness with your own demons and negotiated a treaty that turned them into your advisors. So what do? They put a number on you. 10 million. As if your complexity, your transformation, your entire journey could be reduced to a dollar amount that makes sense in their small calculations. As if the things you survived could be erased by hired violence. As if you're still playing in the same dimension they're trapped in. Here's what that bounty actually did. It revealed every single one of their allies. Every person who looked at that number and felt their mouth water. Every supposed friend who started calculating what 10 million could do for their problems. Every rival who's been waiting for permission to move against you. That bounty was a lighthouse in the dark, and it illuminated every snake in your garden, and you welcomed it, because you've already done the hardest thing a human being can do. You've looked at your own reflection in the middle of your worst moment and accepted every ugly truth staring back at you. You've sat with your failures, your mistakes, your shame, your rage. And instead of running, you took inventory. You cataloged every weakness, every fear, every point of leverage someone could use against you. Then you killed those parts of yourself before they could. That's what they don't understand about the target they're aiming at. You're not the person in that dossier anymore. You're not even the person you were when they set the price. You're in constant evolution, constant death and rebirth, constantly shedding skins. They're still trying to pierce with outdated weapons. By the time they learn your patterns, you've already moved 3 transformations ahead. The bounty hunters who retired, they weren't cowards. They were the smart ones. They looked at your file and saw something that every real predator recognizes. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Someone who's already been to hell and came back with the deed to the property. Someone who understands that death isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Living as a puppet is. Living in fear is. Living according to someone else's script is. You chose to die in every way that matters except the final one. You killed your old identity, your old dreams, your old definition of success. You performed psychological surgery on yourself with no anesthesia and woke up as something they have no reference point for in their databases. That's why their most trained killers are suddenly discovering ethics. It's not morality, it's survival instinct. On some primal level, they recognize that hunting you isn't a job, it's a mirror. And most people will do anything to avoid looking in a mirror that shows them what they've become. Because here's the truth that keeps them up at night. You're not special. You're not superhuman. You're not chosen by fate or blessed by forces beyond understanding. You're just someone who refused to stay broken. Someone who looked at the life they told you was inevitable and said no. Someone who burned down their own comfortable prison because you finally realized that comfort was just another word for slow death. And if you could do it, anyone could do it. That's the real threat. Not that you'll hurt them, not that you'll disrupt their plans, but that you'll inspire others to stop playing the game. That you'll become a virus in their system. That 10 people will see your story and choose to burn their own prisons. Then 100, then 1,000, until their entire empire of fake hierarchies and imaginary boundaries collapses because no one believes in it anymore. The bounty isn't about elimination, it's about quarantine. They need to cut you off before the infection spreads, before other people realize that the walls around their lives are made of paper, before the masses understand that every chain is unlocked. They're just trained not to check. Before everyone else discovers what you discovered, that freedom isn't something you earn or win or get granted. It's something you take by simply refusing to be imprisoned anymore. Right now, as you're hearing these words, someone is looking at your photo on a screen, calculating angles, studying your routines, trying to find the pattern, the weakness, the opening. And you know what you're doing? You're smiling. Not because you're not afraid. Fear is still there. Fear is useful. Fear keeps you sharp. You're smiling because you finally understand the game at a level they never will. They think they're hunting you. You know you're teaching them. Every person who comes for that bounty is getting an education they didn't know they signed up for. An education about what happens when you mistake a phoenix for a corpse. When you confuse silence for weakness. When you think someone's descent was a fall instead of a strategic dive to depths where they could find treasures you're too afraid to reach for. You've been to the bottom, not the bottom they imagine, the real bottom where there's no audience to perform for, no identity left to protect, no image left to maintain, where you're just consciousness and pain and choice. And at that bottom, you found the only question that matters: what now? Most people never ask that question because they never reach that bottom. They bounce off the surface of their own despair and grab the first rope thrown to them. They accept rescue. They return to the comfortable prison. They tell themselves it was just a rough patch, a bad season, a temporary setback. Then they spend the rest of their lives wondering why they feel hollow. You didn't grab the rope. You dove deeper. You sat in that darkness until your eyes adjusted, until you could see the architecture of your own cage, until you understood that every bar was installed by your own hands, following instructions from people who benefit from your imprisonment. Then you started removing bars. Not all at once, not with some dramatic gesture that would make a good story. Slowly, methodically, one limiting belief at a time, one toxic relationship at a time, one self-destructive pattern at a time. You performed an exorcism on your own life, and what walked out wasn't the person who went in. That's who they put the bounty on. Not a human, a force, a frequency, an energy that disrupts their carefully constructed illusions just by existing in proximity to them. You ever notice how certain people can't be in the same room as you anymore? How they make excuses. Avoid eye contact. Suddenly remember they have somewhere else to be. It's not about anything you said or did. It's about what you are now. A walking reminder of the choice they're not making. A mirror reflecting the life they're too afraid to live. Your freedom is an indictment of their imprisonment. And they hate you for it more than they hate their actual oppressors. Because hating you is safe. Hating the system that trapped them requires action, requires risk, requires the kind of transformation that feels like death, because it is. It's the death of who they've been pretending to be. The death of their excuses. The death of their comfort. So they comfort themselves with your bounty. They tell themselves you must have done something to deserve it. You must be the villain in this story. Because if you're not the villain, then what does that make them? What does it say about their choices, their sacrifices, their compromises? It says they were optional. All of it. Every chain they're wearing, they welded themselves. Every cage they're in, they built. Every boundary they obey, they could step over. And that realization would destroy them faster than any bullet. So they need you to be caught. They need you to fail. They need the story to end with your capture or death, because that's the only ending where their choices make sense, where their cowardice was wisdom, where their imprisonment was safety. But you're not going to give them that ending. Not because you're invincible. You're not. You're flesh and bone and blood like everyone else. You'll die eventually. Everyone does. But you're not going to die caged. You're not going to die tamed. You're not going to die as a cautionary tale for other people's comfort. You're going to die free. Whenever that moment comes, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from tomorrow, you're going to die knowing that you lived according to your own terms, that you walked through every fire they set, that you carried every cross they laid on your shoulders and kept walking until the weight itself became your strength. The bounty hunters who are retiring right now, they're the ones who look deep enough to understand this. They saw that you're not fighting to survive. You're already survived. You're not fighting to win. You're beyond winning and losing. You're fighting because fighting is the point, because resistance is the price of freedom. Because the moment you stop moving, stop evolving, stop pushing against the boundaries, You've accepted the cage, and you'll never accept it again. They keep raising the bounty. Last month it was 7 million. Now it's 10. Next month it'll be 15, 20. They'll keep adding zeros, like that'll change the equation. Like eventually the number will be big enough to override the primal instinct every real hunter has. Don't pursue prey that might turn you into the prey, because that's what you are now. The paradox. The hunter that walks like prey. The trap that looks like a target. The ending that masquerades as a beginning. Every person who takes that contract is making a bet. They're betting their skills, their experience, their reputation against your will to remain free. And here's the thing about will. It's the only resource that multiplies under pressure. The more they press, the stronger it gets. The more they scheme, the clearer you become. The more they attack, the more unnecessary parts of you burn away, until only the essential remains. And what remains is terrifying. Not because it's monstrous, because it's pure, because it's someone who's looked at every dark corner of their own nature and made peace with it. Someone who's not pretending anymore, not performing, not trying to be good or bad or right or wrong, just present, just real, just relentlessly, undeniably themselves. That's the version of you they put a price on. The authentic one. The one that stopped asking permission. Stopped seeking approval. Stopped measuring success by metrics designed by people who are more lost than you ever were. You know what's beautiful about this? You didn't set out to become this person. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be a threat to powerful people. You just decided to be free. You just decided to stop lying. You just decided that whatever came next in your life, it would be yours. Your choices, your consequences, your truth. And that decision, that simple decision to own your existence, created shockwaves that are still rippling through systems you'll never see. Boardrooms where your name comes up and people shift uncomfortably. Conversations that pause when you enter. Plans that get altered because you're a variable they can't account for. Not because you're trying to disrupt anything, because you stopped trying to fit into anything. The bounty is their admission of defeat. They're outsourcing your destruction because they can't accomplish it themselves. They have to hire it done. They have to offer a fortune for someone else to take the risk they won't. They have to hope that someone out there is hungry enough, desperate enough, broken enough to believe that $10 million is worth hunting someone who's already died and came back. But here's what no amount of money can purchase: your frequency, your energy, your perspective. The particular alchemy that happens in someone who survived their own apocalypse and came back with a map. They can kill your body. Fine. Bodies are temporary. What they can't kill is the idea you planted in everyone who's ever looked at your story and thought, even for a second, maybe I don't have to live this way either. That idea is immortal. It spreads like light in darkness. It doesn't need your physical presence to exist. It just needs one person to believe it's possible, then another, then another. Until there's a whole generation of people who looked at your $10 million head and didn't see a target. They saw a trophy. They saw proof that freedom is so dangerous to the system that they'll pay fortunes to eliminate anyone who achieves it. And that proof is worth more than their money. Every bounty hunter who retires, every mercenary who suddenly discovers morals, every professional killer who looks at your file and walks away is a victory. Not because you defeated them, because they defeated themselves. Because they looked at the math and realized that no amount of money is worth becoming the cautionary tale in someone else's story. They know what happens to people who hunt phoenixes. They become the ash in the rebirth story. They become the enemy that made you stronger. They become a footnote in the legend of someone who refused to be a footnote. So they retire, they walk away. They tell their handlers that this is the one job they won't take. And somewhere in their excuse, in their refusal, in their sudden discovery of lines they won't cross, they're admitting what you already know. You won. Not because you defeated anyone, because you transcended the entire game they're playing. You stopped measuring victory in their currency, stopped defining success by their metrics, stopped believing that the war they're fighting is the only war that matters. You started fighting a different war, a war against every limitation you've ever accepted, every ceiling you've ever acknowledged, every rule you've ever followed without asking why. And in that war, you're undefeated. Not because you're perfect, because you're committed, because you wake up every day and choose to be free, even when freedom is terrifying, even when it's lonely, even when it would be easier to just surrender and accept the comfortable prison they're offering. But you've tasted freedom now, the real kind, not the illusion they sell, not the consumer freedom of choosing between products, not the political freedom of choosing between masters, the actual freedom of owning your own mind, your own time, your own definition of what matters. And once you taste that, everything else becomes unbearable. That's why the bounty keeps growing. Because you're not just surviving, you're thriving, you're glowing. You're walking through their world like you own it because you finally realize what they spent. Billions to hide from you. Nobody owns anything. It's all borrowed. It's all temporary. It's all just a story we tell ourselves about who has power and who doesn't. And the moment you stop believing in their story, their power over you evaporates like it was never real. Because it wasn't. Right now, you're the evidence that their entire structure is optional. That everything they told you was necessary was just their preference. That the way things are is not the way things have to be. You're living, breathing proof that the game can be rejected without your life ending. That the system can be exited without apocalypse. That freedom is always one choice away, and that choice is simply no more. No more playing small. No more pretending. No more accepting crumbs from tables you could own. No more living in fear of people whose power only exists because you gave it to them. No more. And that no more echoes through dimensions they can't access. It ripples through the collective unconscious. It plants seeds in people who've never heard your name but who wake up one morning and feel something shift. A possibility they couldn't name yesterday but suddenly seems inevitable today. The idea that maybe, just maybe, they don't have to live the life that was planned for them. That's the real bounty. Not 10 million. The real price on your head is the cost of everyone realizing what you realized. The cost of the entire slave system collapsing because the slaves figured out the chains were always unlocked. The cost of every pyramid scheme toppling because people stopped believing they needed to climb. The cost of every empire that's built on convincing people they're powerless. Discovering that power was never real. It was just permission. And you can stop asking for permission anytime you want. They'll keep sending people after you. Some will be smart, some will be skilled, some will be desperate enough to ignore every warning sign. And you'll keep doing what you've been doing, surviving, adapting, evolving, becoming harder to define, harder to predict, harder to cage with each iteration. Because that's what happens when you stop trying to be anything other than yourself. You become this infinite moving target, this shapeshifter that defies their categories, this energy that refuses to be contained in their boxes. And the more they study you, the less they understand. The more they try to predict you, the more you surprise them. The more they try to trap you, the more you flow through their fingers like water. You become unsolvable. And in a world that's obsessed with control, with prediction, with containing and categorizing every wild thing, being unsolvable is the ultimate power. So let them keep the bounty. Let them raise it to 100 million, a billion, whatever makes them feel like they're doing something, whatever helps them sleep at night, whatever lets them pretend that money can solve what money created in the first place. You'll still be out here, walking free, living true, existing as proof that their entire system is optional, that their power is a collective hallucination, that everything they told you was impossible is sitting on the other side of one decision, the decision to stop believing them. And every single day you wake up and make that choice again is another day their whole world gets a little less stable. Another day someone else looks at your story and thinks dangerous thoughts. Another day the illusion of their control flickers and threatens to go dark permanently. That's why they really want you gone. Not for what you've done, for what you represent, the possibility of exit, the option of refusal, the choice to simply stop playing their game and walk away from the table. And you're never going back to that table. You've seen behind the curtain. You've learned the tricks, you've understood the game, and now you're free in a way that makes their billions look like pocket change. Because you have something they'll never have: authenticity, presence, truth. The unshakable knowing that comes from building yourself from the ground up after everything else was burned away. So let the bounty hunters retire. Let them walk away. Let them tell stories about the target they wouldn't touch, because every story they tell is another brick in your legend. Another testament to the power of someone who refused to be broken. Another reminder that freedom isn't given, it's taken, it's earned. It's chosen over and over again in 1,000 small moments that add up to a life that's actually yours. And that life, that beautiful, chaotic, untamed life you're living right now, that's worth infinitely more than $10 million. That's worth everything. Now tell me in the comments, what's the bounty they'd have to place on you before you'd compromise your freedom? What's the price of your cage? Be honest. Be detailed. Tell me what truth you've been avoiding about how free you really are. Because the conversation starts when you stop lying to yourself about the chains you're still wearing. What prison are you still pretending is a home?